Week 3 was definitely the week of, not necessarily the upset, but just the most incredible games
the fans are upset
so far of the year.
I agree.
I'm back from Chicago, rested, ready to go. Sorry I missed your road trip last week, guys. You guys seemed like you went from Carolina to New Orleans.
That was one long road trip. A lot of money spent on airline tickets. I'm hoping the loyal fans of Sports Club will reimburse us for this. But yeah, we were in Carolina and New Orleans last week.
Yes, we was.
And if any of you noticed, they actually filmed the night that the Thursday night game was played. So let's start with the Thursday night game, since you guys probably missed it because you were filming.
We did, yeah. We couldn't hear the Carolina fans though. I didn't hear one peep out of them.
Yeah, let's just start with that. A 36-7 win. Just ridiculously a beatdown.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's nothing to say about this
Andre
game.
Brown broke out for the Giants. He had 20 carries for 113 yards, 2 touchdowns. It's a really good story about a guy who's been cut by, I think, 5 different teams 7 times in the past few years. Good story, but a complete beatdown by the Giants and the Panthers. It was ugly.
I mean, when I was watching the post-game press conference in Chicago, all I could see was Cam Newton just eyes closed. And he didn't even open his eyes during the press conference. He was that upset. Mm-hmm. Going on to first Sunday night game, or the Sunday game, Bears at the Rams at the Bears. Bears defense. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness.
45-yard interception return. I mean, just swarming. Granted, the Rams have a lot of issues up front. They gave up 6 sacks. And they only produced 160 yards. Some of that was the Bears' defense shutting them down. But the Rams' offensive line is very battered.
Not the Rams, but the Bears look good against bad teams. Mm-hmm. They didn't show up against the Packers the week before.
And being in Chicago all last week, it was really interesting just to hear the outlook on how people look at Cutler.
How optimistic and how... did they hate Cutler up there? I really don't know.
They can't stand Cutler. It's incredible.
Join the group.
Yeah, join the rest of the nation.
Speaking of, we're going to hit a team that nobody really pays attention to, but a few of our loyal viewers pay attention to them. Bills. The Bills looked really good. Ryan Fitzpatrick
looked very good.
CJ Spiller looked outstanding before he got hurt.
Yes, and I was going to say, I thought that was the end of the game for the Bills because he has been carrying them on his shoulders.
I agree.
But Fitzpatrick stepped up and said...
Yeah, Fitzy had 208 yards, 3 touchdowns. Spiller getting hurt is a big story in this. Another big story is the Bills. Mario Williams finally getting his first sack of the year. The $100 million man finally in Week 4 getting his first sack.
It's about time, right?
Yeah.
A 24-14 win for the Bills. That improves their record to 2-1 after week. I mean, all of us kind of wrote them off after Week 1.
The Jets
I agree.
demolished them.
Yeah.
Moving on to your boys actually standing up against a...
Oh, Lord.
What can you say about the Buccaneers defense? I mean, their defense has looked pretty decent this year.
Their defense, it was okay, but I think the main story is Dallas is so sloppy. They shoot themselves in the foot so much. I mean, Romo was sacked 4 times. We had 3 turnovers, 105 yards of penalties. Most of those penalties came on the offensive line, which is just atrocious. Our left tackle had 3 false start penalties. 3 false start penalties at home and 1 holding. I mean, we're a train wreck on the offensive line.
In case you guys didn't know, Bryce is a very big Dallas Cowboys fan.
Yes, I am.
So the we comes naturally for him.
Yeah, I am a huge Cowboys fan.
16-10 victory for the Cowboys. That brings them also to 2-1.
Cowboys defense looked good. Freeman only had a 5.3 QBR, which
that's not good.
Yeah, the Bucs have to figure that offense out.
Moving on to the first overtime game of the week, Titans winning 44-41 against the Lions.
Without Johnson. Once again, another game, pretty much a 40-something yard game by Chris Johnson.
Yeah, I mean that's extremely subpar.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking down here, and they're showing the leading rusher for the Tennessee Titans was Jake Locker at 35 yards. So if that tells you anything, the other Johnson though for Detroit, 164 yards and a touchdown. I mean, he's just. Yeah, I know you have him on your fantasy team. Thanks. Which he beat me this week. Anyway.
Two big things out of this Tennessee. Titans were the first ever to score 5 touchdowns, and all 5 touchdowns were 60-plus yards. And you look at the score and you think, man, their offense was firing on all cylinders. Well, only 2 of their 5 touchdowns were on offense. The other 3 were special teams or defense. So the offense put up 14 points on touchdowns, but the defense and special teams had a huge hand in that.
Just a quick, what was the Stafford injury? I know he got hurt in the game. Does anybody know anything
hamstring,
on it?
I believe, a very minor hamstring injury. They said he's going to be back this week. Yeah.
Moving on to the Jaguars at the Colts, another game that, nobody really paid attention to. It is an AFC South division matchup, but what does that do? The Jaguars win their first game of the year, 22-17 against the Colts.
They came back, though.
Yeah, they did.
I think that's the big thing. It's going to hurt Andrew Luck's confidence a little bit. There was 40 seconds left, and they give up an 80-yard touchdown. There's nothing Andrew Luck can do about that, but that's going to be disheartening when you get that kind of production out of your defense.
And we're 3 weeks in. What are you guys' takes on Andrew Luck?
I think he's going to be good. Let's not forget that Peyton Manning started off on a horrible team, too.
Mm-hmm.
Luck looks good. He's got a bad defense team.
Yeah, there's bad defense, and there's not a ton of options on an offense either. There's some older, more mature players with Austin Collie and Reggie Wayne. But, yeah, that defense is horrid.
Second overtime game of the week, Jets at the Dolphins. Dolphins giving up a last-second or overtime field goal for the Jets. That's just got to be killer considering that they were looking really good for most of the game. I think they were up by 7 for the majority of the game. Jets make a fourth quarter comeback and then come back in the overtime period. Sanchez had a pretty decent game throwing the ball. He didn't necessarily show up as far as touchdowns are concerned. 306 yards in the air is a good game for anybody.
But he was 21 of 45.
Yeah.
That's the big stat. 21 of 45, 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. That's like Eli Manning a few weeks back when he had, over 500 yards, but he had 3 interceptions to go with his 3 touchdowns. You got to take the good with the bad with Sanchez, and right now as I'm watching it, you're getting more bad with Sanchez. And I think the big story coming out of this is Revis is out for the year for the Jets. That's going to hurt in a league where Fitzpatrick and Tom Brady look to be pretty good, and you know what Tom Brady can do, and Fitzy's coming up. And Reggie Bush is hurt. I haven't heard how extensive
he's going to
play. All right, because that's going to be huge for the Dolphins. He's 40% of their offense statistically, and that's huge for the Dolphins.
Moving on to another game that I'm surprised that Daniel is actually still here, wearing his 49er gear.
Faithful.
24-13 victory for the Vikings against the 49ers. Are they normal? Are they not godlike?
I know, right? Here's my take on it. This is my take on the game. It's kind of scary because it looks like Ponder has figured out how to beat the 49ers defense. Mm-hmm. He looked. If he plays like this all year, Minnesota's going to be dangerous.
It's a tough division right now. The NFC North division right now with Green Bay, Chicago, Minnesota, and Detroit. Detroit's
mediocre.
But you're also looking at the teams from last year. They should be a pretty decent division.
Ponder looked amazing to me. He was 16 for 25 with 121 yards and 2 touchdowns for passes 10-plus yards. And, he just looked... He didn't look like that rookie we saw last year.
No,
he didn't look like that scared person that we saw last year. Alex Smith throws his first interception in 249 attempts in the regular season.
The last 2 possessions ended with an interception and a sack fumble.
I honestly think that was just a hiccup. You're in Minnesota. It's a harder place to play. That dome can get very loud. Adrian Peterson, Ponder, just... Is this Ponder? Is he here to stay? Or was that just a fluke of Ponder?
Well, here's the funny thing is you say that you think it's just a fluke. Mm-hmm. He tells me that Alex Smith took 2 to 3 steps back in this game.
Yes, he did.
Moving on to the Chiefs game, and I'm going to call it the Chiefs game because the Chiefs came back to beat the Saints. The Saints looked in control for 80% of the game?
Maybe more, yeah.
And all of a sudden, here come the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. Just step by step by step. Thanks in large part to Jamal Charles, who you also had on your team.
I did. That's right. I had him on my fantasy team.
233 yards rushing.
If you have a good rusher against the Saints, you are going to win. The Saints cannot stop no run.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree. In the Super Bowl era, only 2 teams have allowed more yards through this point in the season than the Saints. Their defense is atrocious. It is just... They're not going to probably... they're a wreck. They're beyond words. They're just a wreck right now.
He's so flustered right now.
I can't express how.
Drew Brees did have a pretty decent day. 240 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had a nice day. Bengals at the Redskins. A really, really good game. It was back and forth a lot. And at the very beginning, and I had Robert Griffin III as my starting quarterback. And like 3/4 of the way through, I'm like at 3 points. And I'm like, what the heck? By the end of the game, he ended up with 24. So Robert Griffin III came back and had 221 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 85 yards rushing, 1 touchdown. So he had a good day. Bengals still came out on top.
Washington's defense is atrocious. They're almost as bad as the Saints. I would put them as the number 2 worst defense in the NFL. And they keep shooting themselves in the foot. If you watch the end of that Washington game on one of the drives, they got a unsportsmanlike conduct call that was just stupid. And that's the second week in a row when they've been driving at the end of the fourth quarter. They have a little momentum, and they just get stupid penalties. They're shooting themselves in the foot. I don't understand this. When you have Robert Griffin III running your offense very fluid-like, that's just not smart football, pretty much.
I have nothing to say on that.
I will argue with you on this. Is the second worst defense?
You got Carolina looking pretty bad.
Eagles.
Oh, yeah.
Cardinals win big against the Philadelphia Eagles. Mike Vick sacked 5 times.
Yeah.
Eagles can only muster 6 points against the now stout Arizona Cardinals.
The 3-0 Arizona Cardinals. First time in 38 years they've ever been 3-0.
27-6 is the final there. Moving on to the Texans at the Broncos, and we're looking at 3 games in the season, and Peyton Manning's 1-2.
You expected more?
Well, I think a lot of people expected more, to be honest.
No, if you look at his stats, they've steadily gone downhill. Yeah. There's quite a drop-off if you look at the last 10 games in the stats. There's a pretty big drop-off from the previous, the rest of his body of work.
31-25 is the final score. Houston's also 3-0. Speaking of another 3-0 team, the Atlanta Falcons take it to San Diego.
I called this one wrong.
Yeah, you did.
Big time.
Falcons look
You know
so
what?
good.
And honestly, I'm a Falcons fan, and I was nervous going into this game. I'm sitting here thinking, the Falcons D has shown up the first 2 games, but San Diego's offense looks really good.
San Diego has a lot of weapons. This is not something to look over lightly.
And it was in San Diego.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
Falcons caused 4 turnovers, and when they sent pressure, Rivers was only 6 for 14 with 2 interceptions. And that Falcons defense is getting it done. I think they have shown me more than the new look Falcons offense. That defense has impressed me more than the offense.
And there's two ways to look at it. I'm looking at it as Mike Nolan's come in and just lit a fire under this defense.
He has done a tremendous job with pretty much the same people as he had last year.
Daniel, on the other hand, looks at it as, you know what? Brent Grimes may have been holding them back. Ever since Brent Grimes has gone out,
Curtis
look
Lofton.
at him. Curtis Lofton as well, too. And look at what they're doing with the Saints.
Yeah.
Moving on to another later 4 o'clock game, the Raiders winning against Pittsburgh.
No.
Granted, it's hard to go East Coast to West Coast, but at the same time...
Oakland's a hostile place.
Yeah. 34-31, Pittsburgh loses.
This ain't the same Pittsburgh team over the last couple years. I truly believe that. They don't look like Steeler teams.
I agree.
And there's a lot of 1 and 2 teams in the NFL. If you look up and down right now, it's kind of ridiculous.
Pittsburgh has to have fine balance in their offense. They're way too pass heavy. Dwyer can't do anything. Redmond can't do anything. They're waiting for Mendenhall to come back healthy. They have to find a run game in that offense somewhere.
Did McFadden stepping up actually help out the Raiders?
Oh yeah,
He did.
113 yards and 1 touchdown. He finally showed up. Yeah, that's huge.
Okay, so if we're talking about the elite quarterbacks in this league, first thing, Aaron Rodgers, right?
Are we talking about a body of work or this year?
Elite quarterbacks over body work.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers.
Okay, 1 and 2.
Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady.
Tom Brady, 1 and 2. Next.
3, probably Drew Brees.
0 and 3. Next.
Manning.
Big Ben.
Yeah, Manning.
Big Ben. 1 and 2.
I don't know.
We're looking at a lot of elite quarterbacks. You have to say elite quarterbacks with Ben Roethlisberger because the man's got 2 rings.
Yeah, he's got 2. I agree. I 100% agree.
You have to understand that that's the way that I'm looking at it because a lot of it is measured by your playoff experience.
Playoff.
He's got 2. Okay, Jim Moore. But we're looking, and Tom Brady 1 and 2 this year.
Yeah.
Granted, it was a really, really tough loss by... If only we could film what Bryce has on his screen.
It's my notes.
What do you think? What do you think that Bill Belichick should be fined for what happened after the game?
No,
I don't think he should be, but he will be. He was simply just asking for an explanation on what happened, if it was reviewable. I think he was in the heat of the moment. He was trying to get. He wasn't doing anything aggressive.
But we're looking. Let's just compare it to the NBA. You touch a ref in the NBA,
you're teed up and you're out of the game.
Yeah. So I mean, why wouldn't you get fined if you're going to go cross-platform like that? I mean, if you bump a ref or if you bump an umpire in Major League Baseball, you're gone.
Yeah.
So.
I see where you're coming with that.
I agree, but I think it's BS, man. It is.
Okay. 31-30 victory for the Ravens over the Patriots.
A big thing about that, Wes Welker was actually in the game plan this weekend. The first few weeks, Wes Welker was not in the game plan. They actually worked him in.
And my wife's fantasy team, thanks. Moving on to the, I guess what you want to call the biggest, we're not going to try to dwell on it. It was a really, really tough game for, I guess, Green Bay. For 90% of the time, they were up by, 8? 7? 6? 5? I don't know. I didn't watch. But I paid attention to the end. And we're looking at a 14-12 victory for Seattle Seahawks over the Packers. We're talking this team was a 15-1 last year. Mm-hmm. They lost in the playoffs.
That offense isn't clicking like it did last year.
No.
And I'm not 100% sure why. They have pretty much the same people back this year, but they're not. They're just not. They're not clicking. In Seattle's defense, I had them number 2 last week, rather. I would put them 1A or 1B behind the 49ers defense. Because that
Cardinals look good too now. You have to throw them up there too.
I do agree, but I think Seattle is just one of those bunches. If you like that, hobnob, going to smack you around kind of defense. I mean, that team that just goes in there and plays with reckless abandon.
If we're going to look at it like that, then let's look at, you said Rodgers, the Packers offense not clicking. Mm-hmm. 49ers, great D.
Yeah.
Chicago, great D.
And
Seattle.
49ers, physical defense.
Yes.
Chicago, physical defense.
Yep.
Seattle, physical
Maybe that's
defense.
why they're not clinging.
Green Bay's offense, finesse.
Yep.
So, I mean, that could have a big thing to do with it.
But that's it for week 3 recap.
Yeah, week 3 recap.
It's already moving by so quick, guys.
Dude, this has flown by.
I know.
We're 3 weeks into the season. This has flown by.
Daniel, you enjoying it?
Loving it. What are you talking about? Except for last week.
That sucked.
For Bryce and Daniel, this has been Sports Club Week 3, and we'll see you next week.
Mm-hmm.